Whenever we checked about the change due to the change in the interest rate, if you have the duration data or the modified duration data, then how we can calculate the change in the price? That we have checked the delta P by P into 100 is equal to minus your modified duration into delta I. So your delta I basically is the change in interest rate. D modified is the modified duration. P is basically is the beginning price of that particular bond. So that is the way the price change of the bond can be calculated. That part already we have discussed in the previous class. So like that, if you have the convexity already, you know that convexity means that is basically nothing but your d square p by dp square divided by the price. It is the second order derivative of that particular price change that we have discussed. So dp square d square p by di square, sorry, it is the di square divided by the price. So now we have also to understand that if you have the convexity data, then how the price fluctuations or price change of that particular bond can happen. So if you say that price change due to convexity, then you just note down it is 1 by 2 into price into your convexity into your change in the yield or change in the interest rate square. So that is the price change due to the convexity. So price multiplied by the convexity multiplied by the change in the yield or change in the interest rate, the square of that multiplied by 1 by 2, that will give you the price change due to the convexity. So now let us take one example with respect to, because the total price change is linked to the both duration and convexity of a particular bond. So in that context, we have to understand that what is the total price change happens of a particular bond if there is a change in the interest rate. Let there is a bond. The maturity period of the particular bond is let 18 years. And the coupon is let 12%. Okay. And your yield to maturity, that is basically 9%. Okay. I'll give you the price of the bond. Let the price of the bond is let we have calculated, that is 126.5. And let this modified duration be modified is equal to your 8.38, and the convexity is let 107.7. So if you want to calculate this price change with respect to the modified duration and the convexity, then what is the total price change if there is a change in the interest rate? So let there is a change in the interest rate by 1%. Change in interest rate is 100 basis point, and this 100 basis point is minus. That means the interest rate has declined, right? So that means this is nothing but the 1% only. So now we have the change in interest rate is minus 100 basis point, and duration already you know. So now if you want to calculate this price change due to the change in the interest rate through this modified duration, then what it will be? Obviously, already you know that this is your minus 8.38. That means we are calculating your price change through convexity, then minus 8.38 multiplied by your delta I, that is your 100 basis point, that is minus 100 divided by 100, because the interest rate has declined. So that means it is exactly 8.38%. So now if you want to calculate the total price change of that particular bond due to the convexity, that is your 8.38 multiplied by percent, basically your 126.5, that is 10.6. It is due to the convexity. And price change due to the duration, due to the convexity will be your 1 by 2 into 126.5 into your convexity is 107.7 into your interest rate is basically 1% change, that is 0.01 square. Then that will be coming around 0.68. So now if you want to calculate the combined effect, then it will be your 126.5 plus your 10.6 plus your 0.68. That will give you the total price change or total price of that particular bond after the 1% decrease in the interest rate. That is the way basically the duration and the modified duration or the convexity is helping us to find out that how this price is basically going to be changed and what is the new price what we can get with respect to that particular bond. So like your duration, if you want to examine the different properties or characteristics of the convexity, already we know that if your yield will increase, then the convexity of the bond will decrease. And for a given yield and maturity, lower the coupon, greater the convexity. Lower the coupon, greater the convexity. And lower the, obviously, whenever we talk about the, for a given yield and modified duration, lower the coupon, smaller will be the convexity. So these are the different characteristics or different properties that basically you have to keep in the mind. So these are the different issues which are related to this bond characteristics, or this is the way the price of the bond and other things can be calculated, or the price volatility of the bond can be calculated with respect to the convexity and the duration. So these particular concepts will be more useful whenever we generally invest in the bond market, or we try to make the strategy that what type of bond we should hold in the market to hedge the interest rate risk or to get rid of the interest rate risk in that particular point of time. So now we can move towards the bond market. Basically what we have, the bond market, whenever we talk about, let us consider about the Indian bond market. So in the Indian bond market, if you observe, always we will observe that there are different type of bonds which are traded in this particular market. So is this PPT available to you? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So look at the bond markets in India. The bond markets in India largely, I refer to the bond markets in the sense these are basically the long-term bonds. The short-term bond market part already we have discussed with respect to the money market instruments. So whenever you talk about the bond markets in India, particularly the long-term bond market in India, so there are three types of the bonds which are traded. One is your government securities. Second one is the corporate bond market, and third one is the public sector unit bonds. So there are broadly three types of bonds which are traded in this particular segment or particular market. But if you look at the Indian market is largely dominated by the government dated securities. In terms of trading, in terms of the activities, in terms of the volume, if you observe, then mostly this Indian market is dominated by the government dated securities market. So let us first discuss about certain things which are related to the government dated securities. Then we can move towards the corporate bond market and the public sector unit bonds. So already you know that the government security market is basically the long-term securities, and they carry a fixed or floating interest rate, which is nothing but the coupon. Coupons are always paid on the face value, and always the coupons are paid at a fixed intervals or fixed time periods. Generally, in the half yearly basis, the coupons are paid for the government dated securities. And the tenure of the dated securities or the maturity period, the maximum maturity period of the government dated securities can go up to 30 years. So that's why the maturity period of the government securities are quite long. In that particular sense, we can observe. So there is a public debt office of the Reserve Bank of India, who basically acts as the registry or the depository of the government securities and deals with this particular issue, interest payments, repayment of the principal at the maturity, and on all these things. And on behalf of the government, basically Reserve Bank of India issues this particular type of bonds, and the public debt office is responsible for carrying out all type of transactions with respect to that particular kind of securities. That actually you have to keep in the mind. Already I told you that the government dated securities has a lot of significance in the market or from the investment point of view. Why basically it is very important? Because it is one type of fixed or we can say that risk-free rate which is available in the market. So that's why it can be considered as a benchmark for the rest of the market. So if you are investing in the stock market or you are investing in the derivatives market or other markets, then whatever returns you are getting, if you want to compare your return with respect to a particular kind of security, then it is always advisable to always compare it with this government dated securities market. The reason is basically what? It is considered as a risk-free instrument. So that's why you consider as a base rate. So this is the minimum return what you should expect if you are investing in the other type of securities, because the other type of securities have certain risk involved in that. But the government securities does not carry any kind of default risk and all. So because of that, we consider it is a benchmark. So that's why it is used for pricing the corporate securities like corporate bonds and all these things. So if you are investing in the corporate bond market also, then always the pricing or the interest rate of that particular bonds is decided on the basis of the return or the interest rate what we get from this particular kind of instrument. And all of you know that it is the major instrument for the open market operations to control the money supply, to reduce or to increase the money supply within the system. Generally, Reserve Bank of India always buys or sells these government securities. So in that particular context, this particular market has a lot of significance for conduct of the monetary policy. So already I told you that this is a risk-free kind of asset. That's why it is, we can say that it is free of default risk or the credit risk, because it is backed by the government. The probability of the failure of the payment is relatively very less whenever we deal with the government securities market. The government securities market also.
Hello. So,
Sakhi, you are telling something?
sir, but like if there is a specific like a person who wants to compare on the like he's come from another country and he wants to compare the risk of like his specific bond from that country to our country,
Hmm.
then then in that case will this like the rate which is we are calling it equivalent to the risk free rate will contain that इंटरनेशनल काइंड ऑफ अ रिस्क मतलब दो कंट्रीज का जो डिफरेंस हो सकता है उसमें क्या रिस्क है बिकॉज यूएसए में क्योंकि डेवलप्ड कंट्री और डेवलपिंग कंट्री में शिफ्ट हो रहे हैं जैसे अगर यूएसए और इंडिया ले तो
Hmm.
उसके कारण भी तो रिस्क इन्वॉल्व होगा सो डज इट लाइक काउंटर दैट
If you compare it with the other bond markets, particularly, then if you look at the characteristics of that particular bond, you can compare it in terms of the, if one bond is issued in US, let this bond is issued by the Federal Reserve Bank. If the bond is issued by the Federal Reserve Bank and here the bond is issued by the Reserve Bank of India, then that is comparable. But the question here is that obviously the return what you are getting from the government securities in India will be more than the government securities return of the Federal Reserve Bank issued by the Federal Reserve Bank. The reason is already you know that there is a concept called, we call it the country risk premium. So the return or the coupons are also decided on the basis of the risk, overall risk involved within that particular system, within that particular country. So in that case, you can say that if the 5% return you are getting from the US, then obviously in India you may get 8% or 7 or 9% return. The reason is that even if it is that we can say that risk-free kind of instrument, but still it also captures the impact of other macroeconomic fundamentals or the fluctuations with respect to the macroeconomic variables like inflation, like interest rate in the market, and as well as the, we can say that political stability, and all these things are captured through that. So if your entity is basically same, issuing entity are same, then you can say that okay, this particular returns what you are getting from this instrument are comparable. But whenever you are comparing with the return from the stock markets, let some investor is coming from US and investing in Indian stock market. So in that case, already the return from the Indian stock market captures this other type of risk, other type of factors what we consider are involved with respect to the stock market. So obviously it will be, we should expect that it will be more than that. So in that case, exactly you cannot compare the return what you are getting from your or the US Federal Reserve Bank and the return what you are getting from the Indian stock market. But if the bonds, instead of investing in the US bond market, if somebody is investing in the Indian bond market, then that comparison will be possible. Are you getting my point?
yes sir सर तो फिर स्टॉक मार्केट के केस में हाउ इट विल लाइक वी हैव टू लाइक देन फाइंड अदर मेट्रिक्स टू मेक इट कंपेरेबल
Yeah. Other type of risk factors has to be considered whenever you are comparing with the Indian stock market, because a riskiness or the risk factors in the Indian stock market is more than the riskiness of the or the risk factors for US market or the other markets. What you are telling the developed market. So that's why our risk premium is always higher than them, right? Anyway, that
Yes.
factors which are affecting this Indian stock market return, that I will discuss with you. But you have to always consider those factors also. The macroeconomic factors have a lot of significance for expectations of the Indian stock market. The returns, the asset pricing models are trying to capture the other role of other factors for determination of return from the equity market or the stock market. That I will discuss just maybe once this topic will be over. We will move towards the stock market, then we will discuss that part. Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And as well as the government securities market basically facilitates the public borrowings at reasonable cost and the avoidance of automatic monetization of the government deficit. Anyway, that can be that already is abolished, that we have discussed whenever we are discussing about the treasury bills market and all. Then this market also provides the flexibility to the authorities to their task of the debt management, because it is generally used to manage this public debt, what government wants to borrow from the public by the issuance of this particular kind of securities. By issuing these government securities, the government is basically trying to manage their public debt to some extent. And already I told you it plays a crucial role in the monetary policy transmission mechanism, because already we have discussed about the transmission mechanism before. There are various channels through which the target variable is always achieved. Or we have the interest rate channel, we have the bank credit channel, we have the equity pricing channel, we have the exchange rate channel. So all these things we have discussed before. And this particular kind of operations with respect to the government debt securities market also one way a kind of facilitator for the conduct of the monetary policy. That's why we say that it plays a very significant role in the transmission mechanism of the monetary policy of the government. So that's why this market is quite important, and the significance of this market is quite large, and their operations activities also quite prominent if you think about or if you discuss about the Indian bond market. Then we have to look at that what is the existing structure on the organization of this particular market. Already all of you know that the major players in the government securities market basically includes the Reserve Bank of India, who issues these particular securities. And who are the major investors? Major investors are commercial banks and primary dealers, and some of the institutional investors like the insurance companies. Mostly the insurance companies, commercial banks, primary dealers, they basically always invest in this particular security. And foreign institutional investors, just now what basically you are asking, the FIIs are also allowed to participate in the government securities market within a quantitative limit, which change from time to time. So they cannot invest on limited amount of money in this particular segment. There is certain kind of restrictions the Reserve Bank of India has put, but they are also allowed to invest in the government securities market. And companies also buy or sell the government securities to manage their overall portfolio risk, because it is considered as a risk-free instrument. So to balance their risk or to manage the risk, generally the companies also can buy or sell can invest in this particular security. So if you divide this particular market in the different segments, then we can have a segments like wholesale market, which generally comprise the players like banks, financial institutions, insurance companies, primary dealers, etc. And we have a middle segment, which basically comprise the corporates, provident funds, NBFCs, non-banking financial companies, and the cooperative banks. There, basically, in terms of the size, in terms of the participation, this particular segments have been considered. So we have a wholesale segment, we have a middle segment, and we have a retail segment. It is basically consisting of the individuals and non-institutional investors. So this is the way basically this particular market is segmented. And if anybody wants to invest in this particular security, mostly the securities are always in the dematerialized form. Through online, basically these investments are made in this particular segment. And whenever somebody wants to invest in this particular segment, they have basically the two accounts. One is your SGL account, what we call it the subsidiary ledger, general ledger account, and another one is the gilt account. And how basically the system works. The Reserve Bank of India basically offers a subsidiary general ledger account facility to select the entities who can maintain their securities in the SGL account, which maintained with the Public Debt Office of the Reserve Bank of India. And we have a gilt account because all of them cannot open this SGL account. Generally, banks and other kind of entities are basically open to or maybe allowed to open this SGL account. So that's why that is as the eligibility to open and maintain an SGL account with RBI as restricted. The investor has the option of opening a gilt account with a bank or primary dealer. That means if you want to invest in the government securities, you go and open one gilt account with a bank or a primary dealer. And that primary dealer is eligible to open this SGL account with the RBI. And through that process, the investment can be made. That means you are not allowed to open this SGL account with the Reserve Bank of India. If you want to invest, then what basically you have to do, you go to the bank, you go to a primary dealer and open a account, what generally we call it the gilt account. And through that gilt account, you can invest in this particular kind of securities through that particular commercial bank or through that primary dealers. So that's why the primary dealer will invest through this SGL account and you are investing through this gilt account. So these are the two accounts which are available for investment in the government securities. This part already I have discussed with you that how the government securities are issued. So if it is a yield-based auction, then we arrange it in the ascending order. Then the amount will be fixed by 1,000 crore. Then on the basis of the bid, wherever this particular thing or particular amount is adjusted, in that case, this particular auction or particular coupon will be decided. So for example, we have different yields here, 1,000 crore has been issued. So in that case, the 1,000 crore is adjusted here. So then the particular coupon will be decided on the basis of that particular rate, that is called 8.22%. And if the two bidders of the same yield, they have gone for the bidding, then in the pro rata basis, basically this allocation will be made. So that part, the same process what we use it for the treasury bills, the same process also is applied to the dated government securities. That part already I have discussed with you. The same thing for the price-based auction, but only difference is that in the price-based auction we have the basically these bids are arranged in the descending order. Then accordingly, other process are more or less same. So again, I'm not basically we should not discuss much about this because it's the same process what we follow for the treasury bills. The same process can be followed for the government dated securities also. So how these government dated securities are traded in the secondary market, right? So whenever the government dated securities are issued by the Reserve Bank of India, then this can be traded in the secondary market further to extract the return from this. Because all of you know that every market has two segments. One is your primary market, where the first time the securities are issued, And once the securities are coming to this particular market, then further it can be traded. It can go from one hand to another hand to, on the basis of the demand and supply of that particular security, the price of that particular security changes. So there are three ways this particular securities are traded. One is your over-the-counter market. So the transactions which are undertaken between the market participants in this particular market are expected to be reported in this NDS platform, that is negotiated dealing system, within the 15 minutes after the deal is put through over the telephone. So if any two market participants are trading through this over-the-counter market, then all the details about that particular trading has to be reported in the online platform, which is basically not, we call it the negotiated dealing system. So negotiated dealing system is basically electronic platform or electronic dealing and reporting of the transactions in government securities, which was generally introduced in 2002, basically February 2002. It basically facilitates the members like commercial banks, primary dealers and all to submit the electronically bids or applications for primary issuance of the government securities when auctions are conducted. And now the stock exchange also have started investing in this government securities, and they have a different platform through which if anybody wants to invest in the government securities, they can invest it through the stock exchanges. Particularly in the National Stock Exchange, if you see NSE, NSE has a wholesale debt market segment. They have a debt market segment. If anybody wants to invest in this particular government securities, they can invest through that particular platform also. And mostly the retail investors invest through that particular platform, NSE and BSE, but NSE has a very prominent role in terms of the dealing with this government dated securities. So their debt market segment is quite prominent, quite developed in terms of the Indian debt market, if you see. So these are the different trading platforms through which the trading can be taken place in this particular kind of instruments, or through the we can say that this particular instruments are basically anybody can invest in that particular instrument through these trading platforms. Then we have
Could you elaborate a bit on the difference between treasury bills and this government securities? They both seem to be
treasury bills are short term rate. Treasury bills, the maximum term to maturity of the treasury bills are 364 days. These are the basically the short term securities which are issued by the Reserve Bank of India on behalf of the government. But the dated securities maturity periods are quite long. But other characteristics are more or less same. These are defined on the basis of the term to maturity. Both are bonds, but one is basically the short-term bond and other one is the long-term bond. Is it okay?
yes.
Okay. The other segment is the corporate bond market. So corporate bond market, in the sense, here the bonds are basically issued by the companies. The corporate bonds are basically issued by the companies, and generally the corporate bonds are considered higher risk than the government bonds. So that's why the whatever interest rate or coupons you get from the corporate bonds, that will be relatively higher than the interest rates or the returns what you get it from the dated securities. Generally, if the bonds are issued by the corporates, the payment basically has to be made by the companies in the periodical basis on the basis of the provisions, indenture provisions, which has been signed before. Sometimes also the company's physical assets may be used as a collateral for that particular bonds. These are basically the secured bonds, what we can say. If the company will not able to repay that particular payments what basically they have promised to pay, then these collaterals or these assets can be utilized to repay that particular kind of money or repay that kind of provisions which has been mentioned before. So these are the secured bonds, and some of the bonds are the unsecured bonds which are not backed by any type of security or any type of assets. So that's why the corporate bonds are relatively risky, and the corporate can issue two types of bonds in broad way. One is your secured and another one the unsecured bonds. So this secured bonds are backed by the assets of the company, and the bonds which are not secured, they are basically always issued with a belief, with a kind of agreement that or with a promise by the companies that they will be paying this particular kind of coupons and as well as the principals in the timely manner. So, but in general, if you look at the corporate bonds in India, they're classified also in various ways. So these can be classified by on the basis of the issuance, who are issuing this bond. It can be issued by the corporates, it can be issued by the banks, it can be issued by the public sector undertakings, it can be issued by the local bodies like the municipal bonds and other type of bonds. So based on the maturity, if you look at, it can be a short-term bond, like maturity period is less than 1 year. The medium-term bond, maturity period between 1 to 5 years. It can be a long-term bond where the maturity period is more than 5 years. And if you look at the based on the coupon, some of the bonds have no coupon, what we call the zero coupon bonds. It is always issued at the discount to its face value and will be redeemed at the par. So you know that it is issued at a particular price, and whenever the maturity period will be over, the bond will be basically redeemed on the basis of the face value of that particular bond. Some cases, the coupons are fixed. Every periodical basis, either yearly or half yearly, the coupon rate is basically fixed. It remains constant throughout the life of the bond. Let the bond's maturity period is 10 years. So the coupon rate of that particular kind of bond is fixed over this particular period. Then accordingly, the coupon will be paid. But there are floating rate bonds also available, where the coupon rates are reset periodically based on the benchmark rate. The coupon rate can be changed, which is basically there will be a benchmark rate, there will be a base rate, which will be mentioned before. So depending upon the market fluctuations or market interest rate and all these things, the coupon also can be changed. But within that period, the coupon may not be changed. So that will be mentioned, let the coupon will be changed after 1 year, the coupon will be changed after 2 years. So up to 2 years, whatever thing will happen in the market and all, that is not going to affect the coupon. But after that particular period will be over, then there is a possibility that the coupon rate can be changed. So in the floating rate coupon basis, the coupon rates are reset periodically based on the benchmark rate which has been mentioned before. So we have a option based bond also. Based on the option, the companies can issue the bond. One is a put option, bonds having the put feature, and the bonds having the call feature. So if it is there is a put feature, then the basically this feature gives the bondholder the right but not the obligation to sell their bonds back to the issuer at a predetermined price and the date. So if you have invested in that type of bond, then you have the option that if you want, then you can sell their bonds back to the company at a particular price, predetermined price, which has been mentioned before. So generally, this type of bond protects the investors for the interest rate fluctuations. So if there is an interest rate risk, because if there is a change in the interest rate, then the price of the bond will change. So if you want that if you want to invest this particular bond in that particular point of time in the market, maybe it is not profitable because the price of the bond rate has gone down. So in that particular case, if you want, you can sell back that particular bond to the issuer itself if the bond has a put feature. So call feature, it is reverse. It basically gives the issuer the right, but not the obligation to redeem his issue of the bonds before the bonds maturity at predetermined price and date. That already I have discussed with you. Whenever we are going for valuation of a bond having the call feature or the valuation of a bond having the put feature, the call price and this put price will be mentioned beforehand. So if the issuer wants, then they can always go for buying back that particular bond from the investor itself. At what particular point of time the issuer will go for a call feature, exercising this call option feature? Can you tell me? What is the probability? When there is a probability that the issuer will call back that particular bond? In the high interest rate scenario or low interest rate scenario?
High interest rates.
High interest rate. So if there is a high interest rate, then why they will call back? Can you give the reasons?
Because then they will have to pay, give more interest to the investors.
Giving less interest rate to the investor. I didn't get it.
No, giving. Sir, I am also confused actually.
You think
So
of
the bond value has fallen, right? So it will be hard for them to find investors who would like to invest in their bond.
okay. So you are telling that if the interest rate is high, then there is a possibility. If the interest rate will be high, then there is a possibility that the issuer will call back the bond.
Yes, sir. Because in that case, since the bond value has fallen, and also for the new issuers, he has to pay high interest rate, so it will be hard for them.
Okay. So if the interest rate is high, then the price of the bond will be low, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So if the price of the bond will be low, then already all of you know that generally the call price will be relatively higher than the face value of the particular bond. So it will be good for the issue investor if they will sell back that particular bond to the issuer. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So then why actually the issuer will call back the bond? What is the probability? When interest rates are substantially above the coupon rate. For example, if I will give a condition, when the interest rates are substantially above the coupon, then what is the probability of the bond being called back? It is high or it is low? That is the question I raised. Let me give you a kind of benchmark. Let your coupon rate was 10%, and now the let this interest rate has gone up to 15% in the market. The market interest rate has gone up to 15%. So is there any possibility that the bond will be called back by the issuer?
No,
Think
sir.
of. Yes.
So it will be called because when interest rate become lower.
Then I am giving this condition, one condition. This interest rate is quite higher than the coupon rate. So what is the possibility? The bond, is there any probability that issuer will call back the bond or not? What now the Ravi was telling that they will call back that bond. But if they will call back, what is the benefit they are going to draw? Ravi?
No, sir, they should not be calling back because this time the interest rates are high. So if they call back and if they again want to issue the bonds, they have to pay higher rates this time than what they usually give to the
Okay, so
previous.
then in the high interest rate scenario, the possibility of calling back the bond will be low or it will be high? It will be low?
It will be low. Yes.
It will be low. But it will happen in the reverse. In the low interest rate scenario, the possibility of calling back the bond will be high, because this and it is not profitable for the investor, because once the interest rate is low, this investor can sell the bond with a higher price in the market. But if they will sell the bond to the, or they are bound to sell the bond to the issuer as per the provisions, then they have to sell the bond at the price which is already fixed. The call price is already fixed. So that's why it is risky for the investor point of view. But if there is a high interest rate scenario, then the possibility of calling back the bond is very less. This issuer will not go for that particular kind of calling back the bond. The reason is what exactly you said. If they will go for further issuance of that particular bond, then they have to pay high coupons. Am I clear? Neha?
Yes, sir.
Ravi?
Yes,
Hmm?
sir.
Yeah. So that's why that put feature and call feature wise also we can classify the bonds in that particular market. And there is a bonds, there are some bonds we have a single redemption. So the principal amount will be paid at the time of the maturity. Let the par value of the bond is 1,000. So then if the maturity period is 10 years, then the maturity will be, once the maturity will be over, then the particular principal or the of the bond will be paid. But there are certain bonds which called the multiple redemption or amortizing bond, where the payments can be made by the borrower over the life of the bond. It includes both interest and principal, and these are called the amortizing bonds. So these bonds are not available that way largely in the Indian context. Mostly our bonds, most of the bonds are basically always redeemed at the par. So once the maturity period will be over, you will get back your principal and other things. Okay, the PSU bonds, there is nothing much different than the corporate bonds, but the PSU means it is the public sector undertakings, which are mostly the government companies, or the largest shareholders are basically the government. These are basically the under the administrative control of the government of India. So we call them the PSUs. Can you name some of the PSUs? Yes. Can you name some of the PSUs? Which companies are called the public sector units, or which are operating in India? Some prominent PSUs names. Can you tell me?
Steel Authority of India,
Okay, Cell. Okay, anything else?
BHEL,
Well,
BHEL,
okay. What else? Which is the largest PSU?
Sir, I'm not sure, but Indian Oil Corporation.
Largest PSU is Indian Oil Corporation.
Sir,
IOL.
I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
So ONGC.
ONGC. So I don't know exactly also which is the largest PSU, but it was ONGC.
Sir, it is showing Indian Oil in Google.
Indian Oil Corporation. Okay. Okay, fine. That Indian Oil Corporation, this ONGC, this SAIL, your VAIL, Coal India, these are all basically the PSUs which are operating in the Indian context. The PSUs are also even your Bharat Petroleum Corporations, Power Finance Corporation, PFC, BSNL. So these are all basically the PSUs which basically work in the Indian market. And mostly why we call them the PSUs, the reason was basically mostly this largest shareholders are basically the government. So if you look at the shareholding pattern, the government basically holds the maximum shares. So that's why they are under the administrative control of the government of India. That's why we call them the PSUs. Little bit difference in terms of the PSU bonds. Not generally accepted, but it happens with the PSU bonds. The PSU bonds are basically sold on a private placement basis to some targeted investors. Okay, and they take the help of some investment bankers to find out that particular kind of pricing of that particular kind of bonds, or to decide this coupon rate. But mostly the coupons are fixed on the basis of the market interest rate which is available on that particular point of time. And most of the PSU bonds are transferable. Okay, and the PSU bonds are issued in the demat form. Anyway, all the bonds are basically issued always issued in the demat form only. So nowadays, what is happening to attract the investors and to increase their liquidity in the market? Nowadays, the rating agencies are giving the rating to the PSU bonds. The CRISIL, ICRA, CARE, all type of rating agencies which are there, who provides the rating to the companies and rating to the bonds. Nowadays, they are basically also giving the rating to these PSU bonds, and looking at the ratings, maybe investors will be attracted to invest in this kind of securities. And some of the issues may be guaranteed by the central or the state government, enable them to get a better rating. So some kind of backing of the government will be there. If to get a better rating, by that the investors will be attracted to invest in that kind of securities. The maturity period of the PSU bonds varies between 5 to 10 years. The default rates are almost negligible, like your government dated securities. So that's why they are generally perceived as the quasi-sovereign bonds, or we can say that the more or less the same features like what the government dated securities are there. Some bonds which are issued by PSUs are taxable and some bonds are non-taxable. But anyway, that the provisions for the tax-free bonds under the Section 10 of IT Act allows the complete exemption of interest income arising from the PSU bonds. But that will be mentioned before, whether this particular bond is tax-free or it is not tax-free. And the major investors in the PSU bonds are also the banks, mutual funds, insurance companies, provident funds, and individuals. Individuals also largely invest in this kind of PSU bonds, but only some minor differences are there in terms of the PSU bonds if you compare it with the corporate bonds. The difference in terms of the maturity period, the difference in terms of the we can say that issuance of that particular security, and as well as some difference in terms of the tax. So these are the some of the basic differences, but mostly other characteristics are same. And in terms of riskiness also, the PSU bonds are relatively less risky in comparison to the other corporate bonds which are traded in the market. Because the government is involved in that particular process, relatively this we can assume that the PSU bonds are less risky than the other corporate bonds which are traded or which are issued in the market. But in overall, what we can say that largely the Indian market is dominated by the government securities. Corporate bond market and other bond markets are not that developed, although some activities, some trading is happening, but it is not in that way which is happening with respect to the dated securities. So that's why the Indian bond market is mostly dominated by the government dated securities. Okay, here we can close the discussion on the bond market. Then we can move towards the another important market always we consider with respect to India and as well as other countries, that is called the stock market. So you need 5 minutes break or I will continue?
Sir, we need a break.
Okay, 5 minutes. After that we can start the